After my father came back from prison, he ordered me to hand over my mother's inheritance. You're too stupid to control that money. But when he realized who his parole officer would be, shock. Actually, let me back up. That's where this should have ended. But it's not where it began. The day my father walked out of prison, I was standing in the driveway of the house my mother left me. 8 years. 8 years since the police took him away in handcuffs while my mother sobbed in the kitchen. 8 years since his business partners showed up at our door, their life savings gone, screaming at my mother like she had anything to do with his schemes. I watched his taxi pull up. I'd expected, I don't know, something? Maybe an acknowledgement that I'd been the one visiting him every month for the first 2 years, before I couldn't stand the way he looked at me anymore, like I was an inconvenience. Maybe a thank you for the fact that I'd spent 3 years watching my mother die of cancer while he sat in a cell, unable to even attend her funeral. He got out of the taxi. He was thinner, grayer. His eyes swept over me like I was part of the landscaping. "You kept the house," he said. Not a question, not a greeting. "Mom left it to me," I said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. He walked past me, into the house. My house. He stopped in the foyer, looking around like he was evaluating real estate. "Looks the same. You didn't change anything." "I didn't have the money to. Where's your sister?" My stomach tightened. Of course. She's in Florida, with her husband. "She didn't come to pick me up?" "She's busy with the kids." He made a sound in his throat, something between a laugh and a grunt. "Busy, right." He walked into the living room, sat down on the couch, my mother's couch, where I'd held her hand during her last weeks, and looked at me like he was about to deliver a verdict. "We need to talk about your mother's money." I felt that familiar, cold weight in my chest. The one I'd carried since I was a teenager whenever he'd use that tone. The tone that meant I was about to be told what I'd done wrong, what I'd failed to understand, how I'd disappointed him again. "I'm handling it," I said quietly. "Handling it." He leaned back, spreading his arms across the back of the couch. "You? You're handling it?" "Mom left everything to me. The house, the savings, I know what she left you." His voice went hard. "I also know you're too stupid to control that kind of money." The word hit me like it always did. Stupid. He'd been calling me that since I was 10 years old. Stupid for getting a B in math. Stupid for choosing teaching instead of law. Stupid for staying home to take care of Mom instead of building a career. "I've been managing fine for 3 years," I said. "Managing." He stood up, walked toward me. I had to fight the urge to step back. "You think paying the electric bill is managing? That money should be working for us. Investments. Real estate. I've had 8 years to think about this. 8 years of planning. That money is half mine." He was close enough now that I could smell the cigarette smoke on his clothes. "Your mother was my wife. Community property? I don't care what that will says. I've already talked to a lawyer." My heart was pounding. "You've been out for 4 hours. I made calls from inside. I'm not an idiot, even if you are." He pulled out his phone, tapped something, and showed me the screen. An email from a law firm. "They're filing paperwork next week. You can either transfer the money to an account we share, or we can do this the hard way. Your choice." I stared at the email, and the letterhead looked official. The words blurred together. "I need time to think," I managed. "You need time." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You've had 3 years. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call the bank tomorrow. You're going to add my name to the accounts. And then we're going to sit down and make real decisions about that money. Adult decisions." I nodded. I hated myself for nodding, but I did it anyway. "Good." He patted my shoulder, the gesture so condescending it made my skin crawl. "I'm glad we could have this conversation like adults. Now, I'm starving. What's for dinner?" I stood there, frozen, as he walked toward the kitchen, my kitchen, and started opening cabinets like he owned the place. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister. "Dad's out today, right? Tell him I'll call him this weekend. Crazy busy with Jake's soccer." I didn't respond. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I could hear my father in the guest room, My mother's sewing room, where I'd boxed up all her fabric and patterns, unable to throw them away, talking on the phone. His voice carried through the wall. Yeah, she's exactly as pathetic as I remember. This is going to be easier than I thought. I pulled the pillow over my head, but I couldn't block out his voice, or the sound of the front door opening at midnight. I got up, crept to the top of the stairs. My father was letting someone in. A woman. Young, maybe 30. Blonde. She was laughing at something he'd said, her hand on his arm. "This is the place?" she said, looking around. "It's cute. It'll do for now," my father said. "Come on, I'll show you the bedroom." They walked past the stairs. The woman glanced up, saw me standing there in my pajamas. She didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. She just smiled, a slow, knowing smile, and kept walking. I heard my father's door close. I went back to my room, sat on the edge of my bed. The house was silent except for the muffled sounds coming from down the hall. This was my home. My mother had died in the room directly below where they were now. She'd held my hand and whispered, "Don't let him take everything from you. You're stronger than you know." But I didn't feel strong. I felt exactly like what my father had. Called me stupid. My phone lit up on the nightstand. Another message, this time from an unknown number. "This is Robert Chen from Chen & Associates. Your father has retained our services regarding the estate of Martha Chen. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to discuss settlement options." I set the phone down. Through the wall, I heard the woman laugh again, and I realized that this wasn't going to end with a conversation. This was going to be a war, one I had no idea how to fight. The woman's name was Sienna. I learned this the next morning when I came downstairs to find her in my kitchen, wearing one of my father's shirts, just his shirt, making coffee in my coffee maker with my favorite mug in her hand. "Oh, hey," she said, like we were roommates who'd just met at orientation. "You must be the daughter. I'm Sienna. Your dad told me so much about you." I stood in the doorway in my work clothes. I taught 3rd grade at Jefferson Elementary, had to be there by 7:30, and tried to process what I was seeing. This woman, young enough to be his daughter, comfortable enough to be raiding my cabinets. "He didn't mention you," I said. "Well, it's new." She opened the refrigerator, frowned. "Do you have any almond milk? I'm dairy-free." "No." "Oh." She closed the fridge, took a sip of black coffee, made a face. "That's okay. I'll pick some up later. Your dad gave me a key so I can come and go. Make this place feel more like home, you know?" My jaw tightened. "He gave you a key to my house. Well, it's his house too, right?" She smiled, but there was something sharp in it. "I mean, he lived here for like 20 years before, the misunderstanding." "The misunderstanding?" The words came out flat. "Yeah, he explained everything to me. How those people just didn't understand his business model. How the system railroaded him." She leaned against the counter, examining her nails. "It's really sad, actually. But he's starting over now. We're starting over." I wanted to tell her that my father had stolen from 17 families, that 3 of them had lost their homes, that one man had tried to kill himself after losing his daughter's college fund, that there was no misunderstanding. There was fraud, deliberate and calculated. But I didn't, because my father was standing in the hallway, watching us, and the look on his face told me exactly what would happen if I contradicted his version of events. "Morning, sweetheart," he said to me. The endearment sounded like an insult. "I see you've met Sienna. She's going to be staying here for a while, until we figure out our living situation." "Our living situation?" I repeated. "Well, this house is too small for 3 people long term. Once we get access to your mother's money, we'll look at something bigger. Maybe one of those new condos downtown." He walked over, put his arm around Sienna's waist. Something more appropriate for our lifestyle. I felt like I was watching this happen from outside my body. "I have to go to work." "Oh, before you go..." He pulled a piece of paper from his pocket, unfolded it. "I need you to sign this. It's a temporary power of attorney. Just gives me access to handle some bills while we sort out the estate stuff. I took the paper, read it. It wasn't temporary power of attorney. It was a document giving him full access to all my bank accounts. This isn't what you said it was, I said quietly. It's a formality. Don't be difficult. His voice had an edge now. I'm not signing this. The kitchen went quiet. Sienna was suddenly very interested in her phone. My father's jaw tightened. We talked about this last night, he said slowly. About doing this the easy way or the hard way. I said I needed time to think. You've had time. Sign the paper. No. He stepped closer. Not threatening exactly, but close enough that I had to look up at him. You really want to do this? You want lawyers involved? Court dates? You want everyone to know that you're so selfish you won't even help your own father get back on his feet after 8 years in prison? My hands were shaking. I set the paper on the counter. I'm going to work. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Behind me, I heard Sienna whisper something, and my father's response, "Don't worry about it. She'll come around. She always does." At school, I couldn't focus. During morning circle, when Emma Rodriguez asked me if I was okay, because I seemed sad, I almost started crying. I told her I was just tired. During lunch, I sat in my classroom instead of the teacher's lounge and called the bank, changed all my passwords, set up security questions my father couldn't possibly answer, transferred most of the money from the main account, the one with my mother's inheritance, to a new account at a different bank entirely, one my father didn't know existed. It felt like a betrayal, even though I knew it wasn't. Even though I knew my mother had left that money to me specifically because she knew what my father would do. My phone rang. My father. I didn't answer. He called again. Again. On the fourth call, I answered. I'm at work. What did you do? His voice was ice. I don't know what. Don't play stupid with me. I just tried to access the account. The bank says I'm not authorized. What did you do? My heart was hammering. I changed the security settings. You changed. He made it sound like he was choking. That money is half mine. That's not what the will says. The will? He was breathing hard now. You listened to me very carefully. You have until I get home to fix this. You call the bank, you give me access, or I swear to God, or what? The words came out before I could stop them. What are you going to do? Silence. Then quietly, you really want to find out? He hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone. The fluorescent lights above my desk buzzed. Through the door, I could hear kids laughing in the hallway, someone bouncing a basketball in the gym. Normal sounds. A normal day for everyone else. I pulled up my contacts, found the number for Chen and Associates, the law firm my father had mentioned. Called. Chen and Associates, how may I direct your call? I need to speak with Robert Chen. It's about the estate of Martha Chen. One moment, please. Hold music. My hand was so tight around the phone my knuckles were white. This is Robert Chen. This is Martha Chen's daughter. Your client, my father, contacted me about my mother's estate. Yes, Miss Chen. I'm glad you called. We can certainly discuss settlement options that would be amenable to... I want to know what legal standing my father has to claim any of my mother's estate. Pause. That would be something we discuss in mediation. I'm asking you directly. Does he have legal standing? Another pause. Longer. Ms. Chen, I'd advise you to retain your own counsel before we continue this conversation. So he doesn't. I didn't say that. But you didn't say he does either. Silence. Thank you, Mr. Chen. That's all I needed to know. I hung up. For the first time in 24 hours, I could breathe. I didn't go home after work. I drove to the public library, used their computer to research estate law, printed out articles, made notes. By the time I left, I had a folder full of documentation that all said the same thing. My mother's will was clear. Everything was left to me. My father, as an ex-spouse, they divorced 2 years before she died, something I'd encouraged her to do when she was first diagnosed, had no legal claim. He was bluffing. I got home at 8 p.m. His car was in the driveway. So was another car, one I didn't recognize. Inside, I found my father, Sienna, and my sister Melissa sitting in the living room. Melissa looked up when I walked in. She'd cut her hair, lost weight. She looked good, successful. Everything I wasn't. "Hey," she said. Didn't get up to hug me. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Dad called. Said you were having some kind of breakdown. That you'd changed the locks on Mom's accounts and were refusing to talk to him." "That's not—" "Mel, honey, thank God you're here." My father stood up, and I watched him transform. His face softened. His voice broke just slightly. "I didn't want to worry you, but I'm concerned about your sister. She's not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking fine," I said. "I'm protecting what Mom left me." "What Mom left you?" Melissa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Mom left you everything because you were here. You were always here. The devoted daughter. But that doesn't mean it's fair." "Fair." I stared at her. "And where were you when she was dying? Where were you when she couldn't get out of bed? When she needed someone to help her to the bathroom? When she was in so much pain she couldn't—" "I have a family," Melissa snapped. "I have kids. I couldn't just drop everything and play nurse." "I didn't play nurse. I was her daughter." "And I'm not?" Melissa stood up now. "Just because I didn't put my entire life on hold doesn't mean I loved her less. Girls. My father held up his hands. "This isn't about who loved Mom more. This is about doing what's right. That money should be shared. Family takes care of family." I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw it clearly for the first time. The performance. The way he'd positioned himself between me and Melissa. The way he was playing us against each other. "Did you tell Melissa that you tried to forge my signature to access the bank account?" I asked quietly. His expression flickered, just for a second. "That's ridiculous," he said. "Did you tell her that you brought your girlfriend to move into my house without asking?" Melissa looked at Sienna, who was suddenly very interested in her phone again. "Did you tell her that the bank confirmed you're not an authorized user on Mom's estate because Mom divorced you 2 years before she died?" "I'm still her father," he shouted. The room went quiet. "You're a felon," I said, "and you have no legal right to anything Mom left behind." I watched his face change. The mask cracked, and underneath was something cold and calculating. "Mel," he said, not taking his eyes off me, "I need you to witness something. Your sister is clearly not in her right mind. Look at her. She's paranoid, delusional. She's making up stories about me trying to forge signatures. I can get the bank statements," I said. "And she's kept all of Mom's money locked away for 3 years, like some kind of miser while I was suffering in prison for a crime I didn't commit." "You pled guilty," I said, "and now she's trying to turn you against me." He put his hand on Melissa's shoulder. "I think we need to consider whether she's capable of handling Mom's estate, whether she needs help, professional help." I felt the ground shift under my feet. "What are you saying?" I asked. "I'm saying," he said slowly, "that I have a psychologist friend who owes me a favor. Dr. Patterson. He's agreed to do an evaluation just to make sure you're okay. To make sure you're capable of making sound financial decisions. You can't force me to. I can petition the court." He pulled out another piece of paper. "I've already started the paperwork. Conservatorship. On the grounds of mental incapacity." I looked at Melissa. "You can't let him do this." She didn't meet my eyes. "I don't know. Maybe he's right. Maybe you do need help. You haven't exactly been yourself since Mom died." "I've been grieving." "You've been isolated," my father corrected. "No social life, no dating, just work and this house. That's not healthy." "And hoarding money," Sienna added. "That's like a symptom of something, right?" I felt like I was suffocating. "Get out." "This is still my house," my father said. "Get out." I was shaking now, my voice breaking. "All of you, get out." Melissa grabbed her wire purse. "Call me when you're ready to be rational." They left. All 3 of them. I heard their cars start, heard them drive away. I locked the door behind them, stood in the foyer of my house, my mother's house, and finally let myself cry. I didn't sleep that night. At 3 a.m., I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop, researching conservatorship law, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Is this Martha Chen's daughter? A woman's voice. Unfamiliar. Yes. This is Patricia Morrison. I was your father's case manager at Riverside Correctional. I heard he was released yesterday. My heart started pounding. How did you get this number? That's not important. What's important is that you need to be very careful. What do you mean? Your father spent 8 years planning his release. He had a whole strategy. He talked about it constantly, about how he was going to get his money back, about how his stupid daughter was sitting on a fortune she didn't deserve. I closed my eyes. He said that. He said a lot of things. Ms. Chen, I'm calling because I want you to know something. Your father tried to manipulate me 3 times during his incarceration. He tried to get me to smuggle in a phone. He tried to get me to deliver messages to his associates on the outside. And when that didn't work, he tried to blackmail me with false accusations of improper conduct. What happened? I recorded everything, every conversation. I kept copies of every report. It's prison policy for our protection. I was fully awake now. Why are you telling me this? Because he's going to try the same thing with you. He's going to try to make you look unstable, incompetent, untrustworthy. And when that doesn't work, he'll try to make your life hell until you give him what he wants. She paused. I'm calling because I think you should fight back. And because I think you might need evidence of who your father really is. You'd testify? Against him? If it came to that, yes. But more than that, I can provide documentation, recordings, evidence that he's been planning this manipulation for years. I felt something shift inside me, something hardening. Why would you do this? I asked. Because I spent 8 years watching your father destroy everyone who tried to help him. And because you visited him at the beginning. I remember you. You brought him books, you put money in his commissary, and he talked about you like you were nothing. Her voice softened. You deserve better. She gave me her number, told me to call if I needed anything. When I hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. Then I pulled out my phone and sent a text to the Chen and Associates number. This is Miss Chen. I will not be settling. I will not be mediating. If your client wishes to pursue this matter, I will see him in court, and I will be bringing witnesses. I pressed send. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, understood. We'll be in touch. I set down the phone. Outside, a car pulled into my driveway. My father's car. I watched through the window as he got out, walked up to my door, and tried his key. It didn't work. I changed the locks that afternoon while everyone was gone. He knocked, then pounded. I know you're awake, he shouted. We need to talk about the text you just sent. I didn't move. You're making a mistake. His voice was muffled through the door. You think some washed-up prison guard is going to help you? You think anyone is going to believe her over me? I turned off the kitchen light, sat in the darkness. He pounded again, then stopped. Through the window, I watched him pull out his phone. Make a call. Yeah, it's me, he said to whoever answered. She's not cooperating. We need to move to phase 2. I don't care what it takes. Set up the appointment with Patterson for tomorrow, and get me those papers from the courthouse. No, she's not going to sign anything. We're filing without her consent. He got back in his car. Before he drove away, he looked directly at the kitchen window. Even in the darkness, I felt him seeing me. And I knew this was far from over. The letter arrived by courier at my school the next morning. I was in the middle of teaching fractions when the office assistant knocked on my classroom door, apologized for interrupting, and handed me an official-looking envelope. The return address said, Superior Court, Family Division. My hands went numb. Ms. Chen? One of my students, Marcus, was looking at me with concern. Are you okay? I forced a smile. I'm fine. Keep working on problem number 4. I'll be right back. I stepped into the hallway, opened the envelope. Petition for temporary conservatorship was printed across the top in bold letters. My father was suing me. officially, requesting emergency temporary control of my mother's estate on the grounds that I was mentally unstable and incapable of managing significant assets. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks from now, but attached to the petition was something worse: a mandatory psychological evaluation order. I was required to appear at Dr. Gerald Patterson's office tomorrow at 4 p.m. Failure to appear would be considered evidence of mental instability and lack of cooperation. My father had actually done it. I stood in the hallway outside my classroom, listening to my students' voices inside, and felt the walls closing in. That afternoon, I called the number Patricia Morrison had given me. She answered on the second ring. "Ms. Chen? He's filed for conservatorship. There's a court-ordered psychological evaluation tomorrow." "With Dr. Patterson?" She said the name like it tasted bad. "You know him?" "He testified in 3 different cases involving inmates from Riverside, always for the prosecution, always painting the defendant as mentally incompetent or dangerous. He's not exactly objective." She paused. "But you have to go. If you don't show up, it looks like you're avoiding evaluation. So what do I do?" "You go. You answer his questions calmly and honestly. You don't let him bait you into an emotional reaction, and most importantly, you record everything." "I can record?" "It's a medical consultation. You have the right to record for your own records. Tell him up front that you're recording. If he refuses to proceed, that's on him." I took a breath. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why is my father so confident this will work? He has to know that he doesn't have a real case." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Because he's done this before. Not legally, but psychologically. Your father is very good at making people doubt themselves, at making them feel small, incompetent, crazy. He did it to other inmates. He tried to do it to staff. The question isn't whether he has a case. It's whether he can convince you that he does." After we hung up, I sat in my car in the school parking lot until the sun started to set. Then I drove to an electronics store and bought a digital recorder. Dr. Gerald Patterson's office was in a medical building downtown, all glass and chrome and expensive furniture in the waiting room. I arrived 10 minutes early, signed in, and sat with the recorder in my purse. The receptionist called my name at exactly 4 p.m. Dr. Patterson's office was designed to look calming: soft lighting, leather chairs, a wall of books that looked like they'd never been opened. Dr. Patterson himself was in his 60s. Gray beard, wire-rimmed glasses. He looked like someone's kind grandfather. "Ms. Chen, please, sit down." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "I understand this must be stressful for you." I sat, pulled out my recorder. "I'm going to record this session for my records." His smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's unusual." "It's my right." Of course. Though I should mention that the recording I provide to the court will be the official record." "I understand, but I'd like my own copy." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Very well." I pressed record, stated the date, time, and that I was recording with Dr. Patterson's knowledge. He opened a file on his desk. "Now, I've reviewed the petition filed by your father. He's expressed serious concerns about your mental state. Can you tell me how you've been feeling lately?" "I've been feeling stressed," I said carefully. "My father was recently released from prison and immediately began demanding access to my deceased mother's estate." "And how does that make you feel?" "Defensive. Protective of what my mother left me." "Protective." He wrote something down. "Would you say you've been unusually focused on this money?" "I've been focused on protecting my inheritance, yes." "Do you think about it a lot, the money?" I saw where this was going. "I think about it when someone is trying to take it from me." "Your father suggests that you've become isolated, that you have no social life outside of work. Would you say that's accurate?" "I'm a 3rd-grade teacher. I'm surrounded by people all day, and I spent the last 3 years caring for my terminally ill mother. I haven't had much time for a social life." "But your mother passed 3 years ago." 3 years ago, and I'm still grieving." 3 years is a long time to grieve, Ms. Chen." I felt my jaw tighten. "There's no time limit on grief." "Of course not, but prolonged grief can sometimes indicate depression. Have you experienced symptoms of depression, difficulty sleeping, changes in appetite, feelings of hopelessness. I've experienced grief, normal grief. Your father also mentions that you've been hostile toward him, changing locks, refusing to communicate, making accusations about forged signatures. I changed the locks because he moved his girlfriend into my house without asking. And I didn't make accusations, I stated facts. The bank has records of his attempts to access my accounts without authorization. Dr. Patterson made another note. You seem quite defensive. I'm being accused of being mentally incompetent. I think some defensiveness is warranted. He leaned back in his chair. Tell me about your relationship with your father before his incarceration. I hesitated. It was complicated. Can you elaborate? He was demanding, critical. He had high expectations that I never seemed to meet. Did you resent him for that? Sometimes. Do you resent him now? I resent that he's trying to manipulate me into giving him money. You see it as manipulation. I see it as what it is. And what about your sister? Your father mentioned she's concerned about you as well. My sister hasn't spoken to me in 3 years, except to tell me she thinks I'm having a breakdown. Why do you think she feels that way? Because my father told her to feel that way. Dr. Patterson set down his pen. Miss Chen, do you think it's possible that you're experiencing some paranoia? That you're seeing manipulation where there might simply be familial concern? I felt my heart rate spike. This was it. This was the trap. I don't think it's paranoia, I said slowly. To recognize a pattern of behavior from someone who was convicted of fraud. Someone who spent 8 years planning how to access money that isn't his. How do you know he spent 8 years planning this? Because his case manager told me. His case manager. Dr. Patterson picked up his pen again. Do you often receive calls from prison personnel about your family members? She called me to warn me because she spent 8 years watching my father manipulate people. I see. And you trust this case manager? Someone you presumably have never met? More than I trust my father. That's quite a strong statement. It's an honest one. We went back and forth for another 40 minutes. Every answer I gave, he twisted into evidence of instability. My grief was excessive. My caution was paranoia. My protection of my inheritance was hoarding behavior. By the time he finally said, I think that's enough for today, I felt like I'd been in a fight. I'll have my evaluation ready for the court by the end of the week, he said. You're free to go. I stood up, stopped the recording, and walked out without another word. In my car, I sat with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Then I pulled out my phone and called Patricia Morrison. How did it go? She asked. He's going to say I'm incompetent. Did you record it? Every word. Good. Email me the file. I'll listen to it tonight. I sent her the recording, then just sat there in the parking lot, watching people come and go from the medical building. Normal people with normal problems. Not people whose fathers were trying to have them declared insane. My phone rang. My sister. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Hello? Hey. Melissa's voice was tight. I just got off the phone with Dad. He said the evaluation went really badly, that you were combative and paranoid. He wasn't there, Mel. How would he know? Dr. Patterson called him after. He's allowed to, because Dad's the one who filed the petition. Of course he did. Look, I'm not trying to gang up on you, but I'm worried. You don't sound like yourself. What did I sound like before, Mel? Before Mom died? Before Dad went to prison? Tell me, what was I like when everything was normal? Silence. You were quieter, she said finally. You didn't argue. You didn't fight back. Maybe that was the problem. Or maybe that was you being you. And this, whatever this is you falling apart. I closed my eyes. Did Dad tell you that he tried to forge my signature to access Mom's accounts? He said you were confused about that. Did he tell you that he moved his 30-year-old girlfriend into my house? He said he was staying with you temporarily and that you were being unreasonable about him having guests. Did he tell you that Mom divorced him before she died, specifically because she didn't want him to have any claim to her estate? Pause. They were divorced? 2 years before she died. She did it from her hospital bed. I was there. So was her lawyer. Why didn't you tell me? You didn't call Mel. Not when she filed the papers. Not when she was dying. Not when she died. You showed up to the funeral, said you were sorry, and left. I had kids to get back to. Everyone has an excuse. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. I was crying now, angry tears that I couldn't stop. Mom left me everything because I was there, because I held her hand when she was scared, because I changed her bandages and helped her to the bathroom and sat with her at 3 a.m. when the pain was so bad she couldn't sleep. And now Dad wants to take it all away, and you're helping him, and I don't know how to fight both of you. Melissa was quiet for a long time. I didn't know they were divorced, she said finally. He didn't. Tell me that. He's not telling you a lot of things. Maybe. She sighed. Look, I have to go. Jake has soccer. But I'll think about what you said, okay? She hung up. I sat in the parking lot until it got dark. 2 days later, Patricia called me. I listened to the recording. Patterson is absolutely planning to paint you as unstable. I know, but there's something else. Something I noticed in the way he was asking questions. He was being fed information. What do you mean? He knew things about you that weren't in the petition. Specific details about your daily routine, your relationships with coworkers, your habits. Someone's been watching you, reporting back to your father, and your father's been feeding it to Patterson to build a case. My blood went cold. Who? I don't know, but you need to be careful, and you need to document everything. Where you go, who you see, what you do. If they're building a narrative that you're unstable, you need evidence to counter it. After we hung up, I sat down and made a list of everyone in my life. Everyone who had access to my schedule, my habits, my routine. The list was short, and when I really thought about it, there was only one person who'd been asking a lot of questions lately, who'd been unusually interested in my life, who'd shown up out of nowhere just when my father was released. My classroom assistant, Jennifer. She'd been assigned to my class 3 months ago. Said she was getting her teaching credential, needed observation hours. She'd been helpful, friendly, asked a lot of personal questions that I'd answered because I thought she was just being nice. But thinking back now, those questions had been specific, about my routines, about my mother, about my family, and she'd been in my classroom the day the court papers were delivered. I pulled up the school directory, looked up her information. The phone number went to a disconnected line. The address was a UPS store. Jennifer wasn't a student teacher. She was a plant. The next morning, I went to my principal. I need to report something, I said, about my classroom assistant. Principal Davis looked up from her computer. Jennifer? What about her? I don't think she's actually a student teacher. I think she was placed here to spy on me. Davis stared at me. That's quite an accusation. I know how it sounds, but can you check her credentials? Verify that she's actually enrolled in a credential program? I can check, but Ms. Chen, is everything okay? You seem stressed. I'm dealing with some family issues. I heard. The courier delivery the other day. Court papers? Word traveled fast. It's a private matter. Of course. But if you need time off, or if you need resources, employee assistance, I just need you to check on Jennifer. Davis sighed. I'll look into it. But Ms. Chen, I have to say, I'm concerned about you. I'm fine. Are you? Because this sounds like paranoia. Like stress, manifesting as, please just check her credentials. Davis nodded slowly. I will. But in the meantime, maybe you should consider taking a few personal days. Just to rest. I left her office feeling like the walls were closing in from every direction. That afternoon, Jennifer didn't show up to my classroom. I called the main office. They said she'd called in sick. I called her phone, disconnected. I asked Davis if she'd verified the credentials yet. She said she was looking into it, but that the university was taking a while to respond. After school, I went to the UPS store address Jennifer had listed. The clerk told me no one by that name had a mailbox there. I drove home, checked my mailbox. Inside was a plain white envelope, no return address. Inside the envelope were photographs of me. Leaving my house in the morning, at school, at the grocery store, in my car at night. Dozens of them. And at the bottom, a note in handwriting I didn't recognize. You can't hide from family. I locked myself in my house, checked every window, every door. Then I called Patricia Morrison. They're escalating, I told her. Then we escalate too, she said. It's time to go on the offensive. How? Meet me tomorrow. I have something to show you, something your father doesn't know I kept. What is it? Insurance, she said. The kind that ends this whole thing. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop across town at noon. I spent the night sitting in my living room with all the lights on. The photos spread across the coffee table, and my mother's voice in my head, "You're stronger than you know." I didn't feel strong, but I was tired of feeling scared. The next morning, I woke up to find a car parked across from my house. A man I didn't recognize sat in the driver's seat, watching my front door. When I came out to go to work, he started his car. He followed me all the way to school. I called Patricia from the parking lot. "Someone's following me." "Get the license plate, I'll run it." I gave her the number. "I'm on my way to the coffee shop now," she said. "Meet me there. Lose the tail if you can." I went into school, told the office I was feeling ill, and left through the back entrance. Got in my car, drove a deliberately confusing route through residential streets until I was sure I'd lost him. I arrived at the coffee shop 20 minutes late. Patricia was already there, a briefcase on the table in front of her. "Sorry," I said, sliding into the booth. I know. I saw him when I arrived. He's been here the whole time, watching the entrance." I turned. The same car. The same man. "He's not even trying to hide it," Patricia said. "That's intentional. They want you to know you're being watched. They want you scared. It's working." She pushed the briefcase toward me. "This will help." I opened it. Inside were files. Dozens of them. Audio recordings, transcripts, and at the bottom, a thick stack of photographs. "What is this?" I asked. 8 years of documentation. Every time your father tried to manipulate someone, every scheme he ran inside, every threat he made. She tapped the stack of photos, including these. Photos he kept in his cell. "You're going to want to look at the one on top." I picked it up. It was a photo of me standing in front of my mother's house. Someone had drawn a red X over my face, and written in the margin, in my father's handwriting, "Stupid girl won't know what hit her." I stared at it. "When was this taken?" I asked. 6 months before his release. He'd been planning this for years, and he's not going to stop until he gets what he wants, or until someone stops him. I looked up at her. "Will you testify in court with all of this?" "Yes," she said, "but there's something you need to know first." "What?" "Your father knows I have this. He's suspected for a while. That's why he's escalating now. He's trying to break you before the hearing, before I can get on the stand. So what do I do?" She closed the briefcase. "You survive the next 10 days. And then you show up to that hearing with me and every piece of evidence in this case. And you watch him lose. And if he doesn't lose, then we go to plan B." "Which is?" She smiled, but there was no humor in it. "We make sure the world knows exactly who your father is. Every news outlet, every social media platform, every person who ever trusted him. We burn his reputation to the ground." I thought about my mother, about the way she'd looked at me in those final days, about the way she'd said, "Don't let him win." "Okay," I said, "let's do it." We shook hands. And when I left the coffee shop, I didn't look at the man in the car. I didn't need to. Because for the first time since my father came home, I wasn't the one who should be afraid. He was. The surveillance didn't stop. For the next week, everywhere I went, I saw them. Different cars, different people, but always there. Outside my house in the morning, in the parking lot, at school, at the grocery store, at the gas station. My father wanted me to know I was being watched, wanted me to feel trapped. But something had changed after my meeting with Patricia Morrison. The fear was still there. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. But underneath, it was something harder, something that felt like steel forming in my chest. I started documenting everything. Every car that followed me, every license plate, every face. I took photos, made notes, kept a detailed log with timestamps. If they were building a case that I was paranoid, I was building a case that I had every reason to be. and I started preparing for the hearing. 5 days before the court date, Patricia and I met with a lawyer. His name was Marcus Webb, and Patricia had recommended him. He specializes in elder abuse and estate manipulation, she told me. If anyone can counter your father's conservatorship petition, it's him. Webb's office was nothing like Dr. Patterson's sleek setup. It was cluttered, books everywhere, files stacked on every surface. But his eyes were sharp when he looked at me. "Ms. Chen," he said, shaking my hand, "Patricia's told me about your situation. I've reviewed the petition your father filed. It's aggressive, but it's not airtight. Dr. Patterson's evaluation," I started, "is one piece of evidence. We'll counter it with our own expert. I've already arranged for Dr. Sarah Kim to evaluate you. She's testified in dozens of conservatorship cases, and she's much more reputable than Patterson." He opened a file on his desk. "But more importantly, we're going to establish a pattern of behavior. Your father isn't trying to help you. He's trying to control your assets. Patricia's documentation will be crucial here." Patricia set her briefcase on the desk. "Everything's here. 8 years of incident reports, recordings, disciplinary actions, including evidence that he was planning this manipulation before his release." Webb pulled out the photo of me with the red X over my face, studied it. "This is good," he said. "This shows premeditation. This shows malicious intent. No judge is going to look at this and think your father has your best interests at heart." "But what about my sister?" I asked. "She's testifying for him. What will she say?" "That I've been isolated, depressed, that I'm not the same person I was before my mother died." Webb nodded. "Grief isn't mental incompetence. We'll establish that you've been functioning perfectly well. You're employed, you're responsible, you're managing your finances appropriately. The only instability in your life started when your father was released. That's not a coincidence." He spent the next 2 hours preparing me for what to expect in court. The questions I'd be asked, how to respond, what not to say. "The key," he told me, "is to stay calm. Your father is going to try to provoke you. Dr. Patterson's evaluation is going to paint you as erratic and defensive. You need to prove them wrong by being the exact opposite, composed, rational, clear-headed." "What if I can't?" I asked quietly. "What if I break down?" "Then you break down," Webb said. "You're human. You've been under enormous stress. Showing emotion isn't the same as being mentally incompetent. But if you can stay strong, it'll be more powerful." After the meeting, Patricia walked me to my car. "You're doing good," she said. "Better than most people in your situation." "I don't feel like I'm doing good. I feel like I'm barely holding it together." "That's normal. But here's what you need to remember. Your father is used to people breaking. He spent 8 years surrounded by people who eventually gave him what he wanted, either because they were afraid or because they got tired of fighting. He's not prepared for you to actually stand up to him." "How do you know?" She smiled. "Because I saw it. Every time someone refused to be manipulated, he didn't know what to do. He'd escalate, throw a tantrum, make threats. But underneath, he was scared, because his only real power is the power people give him." I thought about that as I drove home. My father's power was the power I gave him, and I was done giving it. 3 days before the hearing, I received an unexpected visitor at school. I was in my classroom during lunch when someone knocked on the door. I looked up and saw Melissa standing there. She looked terrible, and dark circles under her eyes. Her hair pulled back messily. She'd been crying. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then nodded. She sat down at one of the student desks, too small for her, her knees awkwardly high. For a moment, she just looked around at the classroom, at the alphabet posters, at the student artwork on the walls, at my mother's photo on my desk. "I remember when you first wanted to be a teacher," she said. "You were like 12. Mom thought you'd grow out of it. I didn't." "No, you never grew out of anything. You just committed." She looked at me. "I've been thinking about what you said, about Mom's divorce, about Dad forging signatures, about all of it." "And?" "I called the bank, the one where Mom had her accounts. I said I was trying to verify some information for estate purposes. She pulled a piece of paper from her purse. They sent me the transaction history, including 3 attempted access requests from an unauthorized party that were flagged and denied. She slid the paper across the desk. I looked at it. The dates were from the week after my father was released. The IP address was traced back to a computer at a public library, the one near my house. He lied to me, Melissa said quietly. He told me you were making it up, that you were paranoid, but he actually did try to access the accounts. I know. And the evaluation with Dr. Patterson? I did some research. He's been sanctioned twice by the medical board for bias in court-ordered evaluations. He has a reputation for testifying in favor of whoever's paying him. I know that too. She pressed her hands to her face. I'm such an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're his daughter. You wanted to believe him. I didn't just want to believe him. I wanted him to be different. I wanted him to have learned something in prison, to have changed. Because if he changed, then maybe... She trailed off. Maybe what? Maybe he'd finally see me. Really see me. Not just as an extension of him, but as a person. She laughed bitterly. Stupid, right? I'm 42 years old, and I'm still trying to get my dad's approval. I didn't say anything, because I understood. Because I'd spent my whole life doing the same thing. I'm not testifying for him, Melissa said. I called his lawyer this morning and told them I'm withdrawing my statement. Something loosened in my chest. Are you sure? I'm sure, and I'm sorry. For not being there when Mom was sick, for not calling, for taking his side without even listening to yours. She wiped her eyes. I can't get that time back, but I can do this. I can tell the truth. What will you tell them? That Dad was controlling and manipulative our entire childhood. That he called you stupid so many times you started to believe it. That Mom divorced him because she was terrified he'd take everything she'd saved if something happened to her. She looked at me directly. And that you're the strongest person I know, because you survived him and still somehow turned into a decent human being. I felt tears burning behind my eyes. Mel, I should have said that 3 years ago, at Mom's funeral, instead of running back to Florida like a coward. She stood up. I have to go. Jake's orthodontist appointment, but I wanted you to know, before the hearing, that you're not alone in this. She walked to the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, she said, Mom was right to leave everything to you. You earned it. And I'm going to make sure Dad doesn't take it away. After she left, I sat at my desk and cried. Not sad tears. Relief tears. Because for the first time in 3 years, I had my sister back. 2 days before the hearing, Dr. Sarah Kim evaluated me. Her office was warm, comfortable. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. I've reviewed Dr. Patterson's report, she said after we'd settled in. I'd like to conduct my own evaluation, but I want you to know up front. I'm not here to prove or disprove anything. I'm here to assess your actual mental state, whatever that may be. Okay, I said. I'm also going to record this, with your permission. And you're welcome to record it as well. We both started recording. The evaluation was nothing like Patterson's. Dr. Kim asked about my childhood, my relationship with my parents, my mother's illness and death. She asked about my job, my daily routine, my coping mechanisms, but she didn't twist my words. She didn't lead me into traps. She just listened. When I told her about the surveillance, about the photos, about my father's behavior since his release, she took notes but didn't comment on whether I was being paranoid. Instead, she asked, how has this affected your ability to function? It's been hard, I admitted. I'm not sleeping well. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. But I'm still going to work, still teaching, still managing my responsibilities. Do you feel you're in danger? Yes. And not physical danger necessarily. But I feel like my father is trying to destroy my life. Based on what you've told me, that seems like a reasonable assessment, not a paranoid one. She set down her pen. Ms. Chen, I need to ask you something directly. Do you believe you're capable of managing your mother's estate? Yes. Do you have any plans to harm yourself or others? No. Do you experience hallucinations, delusions, or breaks from reality? No. Do you feel that grief over your mother's death has impaired your judgment or decision-making abilities. Grief has affected me, but it hasn't impaired my judgment. If anything, it's made me more careful, more deliberate. Dr. Kim nodded. I'm going to be honest with you. Dr. Patterson's evaluation reads more like an advocacy piece than a clinical assessment. He's made conclusions that aren't supported by the evidence he presents. A person can be defensive without being paranoid. A person can be cautious without being mentally incompetent. So you don't think I'm crazy? She smiled. I think you're someone who's been put under extraordinary stress by a family member with a documented history of manipulation. Your responses are appropriate to the situation you're in. That's not mental illness. That's survival. When I left her office, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through everything that could go wrong. What if the judge believed my father? What if Dr. Kim's evaluation wasn't enough? What if Melissa changed her mind? At 2 a.m., I got up, went downstairs, made tea. My mother's photo was on the mantle, the one from her 50th birthday before she got sick. She was laughing in it, her head thrown back, genuinely happy. I picked it up, held it. I don't know if I can do this, I whispered to the photo. I don't know if I'm strong enough. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Morrison. Can't sleep either. Want to talk? I called her. Hey, she said. How are you holding up? I'm terrified. That's normal. I've been to a lot of these hearings. It's always terrifying. What if we lose? Then we appeal, and we keep fighting. But we're not going to lose. Your father made a mistake. What mistake? He underestimated you. He thought you'd fold the way you always did. He thought if he pushed hard enough, threatened loud enough, you'd just give him the money to make it stop. She paused. But you didn't. You stood up. You fought back. And now he's in a corner and he doesn't know what to do. He's going to be at the hearing tomorrow. I know. I haven't seen him since the evaluation, since he found out about you. Are you worried about seeing him? I thought about that. No, not anymore. I'm worried about what he'll say, what he'll do. But I'm not worried about seeing him, because I know something now that I didn't know before. What's that? He's not as powerful as I thought he was. He's just a man. A manipulative, cruel man. But just a man. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Your mother would be proud of you. After we hung up, I went back to bed. And this time, I slept. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully. A simple navy dress, professional but not too formal. I wanted to look competent, stable, put together. I met Marcus Webb and Patricia Morrison outside the courthouse at 8:30. Melissa was already there, standing awkwardly by the entrance. I wasn't sure you'd come, I said. I almost didn't, she admitted, but I'm here. We went inside together. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, more like a conference room than what you see on TV. There was a judge's bench, a table for each party, a few rows of chairs for observers. My father was already there. He sat at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, Mr. Chen from Chen and Associates. Sienna was in the front row behind him, dressed inappropriately for court in a tight dress and too much makeup. When my father saw me, our eyes met. I expected him to smirk, to look confident, to give me that look that said, "You can't win," but he didn't. He looked worried, and in that moment, I knew Patricia was right. He was afraid. All rise, the bailiff said. The Honorable Judge Margaret Thornton presiding. Judge Thornton was a woman in her 60s. Gray hair pulled back in a bun, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked at both tables, then at the file in front of her. This is case number 2024 CV 8847. Petition for conservatorship filed by Robert Chen regarding the estate of Martha Chen, deceased. I've reviewed the initial filings. She looked at my father's lawyer. Mr. Chen, you may present your case. Robert Chen stood up. Your Honor, this petition is filed out of genuine concern for Ms. Chen's well-being and her ability to manage significant assets. We have documentation from Dr. Gerald Patterson indicating that Ms. Chen is experiencing symptoms of paranoia, social isolation, and depression that render her unable to make sound financial decisions. He submitted Dr. Patterson's report. We also have testimony from family members indicating that Miss Chen has undergone a personality change since her mother's death, becoming hostile, defensive, and irrational. Judge Thornton looked at Melissa. "Are you the family member in question?" Melissa stood up. "I was, Your Honor, but I've withdrawn my statement. I no longer believe my sister is incompetent." The judge raised her eyebrows. "When did you withdraw?" "3 days ago. I informed Mr. Chen's office." The judge looked at Robert Chen. "Counselor." He cleared his throat. "We were informed, Your Honor. However, we have other evidence supporting the petition." "Present it." For the next hour, Robert Chen presented his case. Dr. Patterson's evaluation, financial records showing that I'd moved money between accounts, documentation of the changed locks, the security measures, the paranoid behavior. My father testified. He spoke calmly, sadly, about his troubled daughter who wouldn't let him help her, about how worried he was, about how he just wanted what was best for me. He was convincing. I had to give him that. If I didn't know him, I might have believed him. Then it was our turn. Marcus Webb stood up. "Your Honor, this petition is not about concern for Ms. Chen's well-being. It's about access to money. Money that belongs to Ms. Chen, that her mother specifically left to her, knowing full well that the petitioner, her ex-husband, would attempt to claim it. He submitted documentation of my parents' divorce, of my mother's will, of the explicit language stating that everything was to go to me. The petitioner has a documented history of financial fraud. He served 8 years in prison for defrauding investors. Within days of his release, he attempted to access Ms. Chen's bank accounts without authorization. This petition is simply another manipulation tactic." He called Dr. Sarah Kim to testify. She presented her evaluation, spoke clearly and professionally about my mental state. Ms. Chen is experiencing normal grief and appropriate caution given the circumstances. She shows no signs of mental incompetence, paranoia, or inability to manage her affairs. Then Patricia Morrison took the stand. She was incredible, calm, professional, devastatingly factual. "I was Mr. Chen's case manager for 8 years at Riverside Correctional. During that time, he made numerous attempts to manipulate staff, manipulate other inmates, and plan various schemes for when he was released. One of those schemes explicitly involved gaining access to his ex-wife's estate through his daughter. She submitted the photo of me with the red X. This photo was confiscated from Mr. Chen's cell 6 months before his release. He'd written plans in the margins about how he would break his daughter, make her doubt herself, and ultimately force her to give him the money. I watched my father's face as the photo was entered into evidence. He looked like he wanted to disappear. Additionally, Patricia continued, Mr. Chen hired individuals to surveil his daughter, to follow her, to intimidate her. Ms. Chen documented this surveillance extensively. She wasn't paranoid, she was being stalked. She submitted my documentation, the license plates, the photos, the timeline. Judge Thornton looked at my father. "Mr. Chen, did you hire people to follow your daughter?" He hesitated. "I was concerned about her mental state. I wanted to make sure she was safe. By having strangers follow her? Take photos of her? Send her threatening notes?" "I never sent threatening notes." Patricia pulled out the envelope with the photographs. These were delivered to Ms. Chen's home. Photos of her with a note that said, "You can't hide from family." The handwriting matches samples of Mr. Chen's from his prison records. The courtroom was silent. Judge Thornton removed her glasses, rubbed her eyes. "I've heard enough," she said. "This petition is denied." My heart stopped. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I'm issuing a restraining order. Mr. Chen, you are to have no contact with your daughter. No direct contact, no indirect contact through third parties. No surveillance, no communication of any kind. If you violate this order, you will be held in contempt." She looked at me. "Ms. Chen, your mother's estate remains entirely under your control. This court finds no evidence of mental incompetence or inability to manage your affairs. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. I couldn't breathe. Marcus Webb was smiling. Patricia was squeezing my hand. Melissa was crying. I looked at my father. He was staring at the table, his face red, his hands clenched into fists. Sienna had already left. As we walked out of the courtroom, my father stood up. For a moment, I thought he was going to say something, to make one last threat. But he just looked at me, and I looked back. And I didn't say a word, because I didn't need to. I'd already won. The days after the hearing felt surreal. I kept waiting for something bad to happen. For my father to show up at my door, for another threatening letter, for some new scheme to unfold, but nothing came. The restraining order had teeth, and my father knew it. One violation would send him back to prison, and even he wasn't foolish enough to risk that. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. A week after the hearing, I was at school when Principal Davis called me into her office. My stomach dropped. Had my father found a way to get to me through my job? But when I walked in, Davis was smiling. "Sit down, Mrs. Chen. I have some news." I sat, my hands gripping the armrests. "I finished the investigation into your classroom assistant, Jennifer." Davis pulled out a file. "You were right. She wasn't enrolled in any credential program. The university had no record of her. So who was she? Her real name is Jennifer Kaplan. She's a private investigator. She was hired through a third party to observe you and report on your daily activities, mental state, and behavior patterns." My blood went cold. My father hired her. Most likely. The third party was a shell company, but we traced it back to a law firm, Chen and Associates. Can you press charges? We've reported it to the police. They're investigating. But more importantly, she's been banned from school property, and we've implemented new verification protocols for all volunteers and assistants. Davis leaned forward. "I owe you an apology. When you first came to me with this, I thought you were being paranoid. I should have taken you seriously." "A lot of people thought I was paranoid," I said quietly. "Well, you weren't, and I'm sorry." She closed the file. "How are you doing? Really?" I don't know. Better, I think. The court case went well, but I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's trauma response. It'll take time to feel safe again." She paused. "If you need anything, counseling resources, time off, whatever, just let me know." After I left her office, I sat in my car in the parking lot and called Patricia Morrison. "He hired a private investigator to infiltrate my workplace," I told her. "I'm not surprised. Your father was thorough, but it's over now. He can't get near you." "Then why don't I feel safe?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Because safety isn't just about physical distance. It's about knowing you have control over your own life. And you're still adjusting to having that control back. How long does it take? As long as it takes. Be patient with yourself." 2 weeks after the hearing, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Ms. Chen?" A man's voice. Professional, cautious. "Yes? This is Detective James Warren with the Financial Crimes Unit. I'm calling about your father, Robert Chen." My heart started pounding. "What about him?" "We've been investigating him for several months now. We have evidence that he's been running another investment scheme, similar to the one he was convicted for 8 years ago. We believe he started planning it while he was still incarcerated." "What kind of scheme?" "He's been soliciting investments from former business associates, promising high returns on a tech startup. The startup doesn't exist. The money is going into offshore accounts." I closed my eyes. Of course it is. "We have enough evidence to charge him, but we need testimony from people who can establish his pattern of behavior. Ms. Morrison has already agreed to testify, and we were hoping you would as well." "What would I have to testify about?" "His attempts to manipulate you after his release, his efforts to gain control of your mother's estate, the conservatorship case. It all establishes a pattern of financial manipulation and fraud." "Would I have to see him? In court?" "Yes, but you'd be a witness for the prosecution. You'd be protected." I thought about it. About 8 more years of my father in prison. About him finally being held accountable, not just for what he did to me, but for what he was still doing to other people. "I'll do it," I said. The next few weeks were a blur of depositions, meetings with prosecutors, and preparation for trial. My father's new scheme had been elaborate. He'd convinced 6 people to invest a total of $2 million. All of them were former colleagues, people who'd somehow still believed in him despite his previous conviction. One of them was a man named David Torres. He'd lost $400,000, his entire retirement savings. I met him during a break in one of the depositions. He was in his 70s, gray-haired, wearing a worn suit. He looked defeated. "You're Robert's daughter," he said when I introduced myself. "Yes. I'm sorry for what he did to you. It's not your fault." He sat down heavily in one of the plastic chairs. "I should have known better. I lost money to him the first time too. Not as much, but enough. I don't know what I thought, that he'd learned his lesson, that prison had changed him. Prison doesn't change people like my father. It just gives them time to plan the next con." "You're testifying against him?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Good. Someone needs to stop him." The trial was scheduled for 3 months after the hearing. In that time, I tried to rebuild my life. I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Lisa Martinez specialized in family trauma and manipulation. She helped me understand that what my father had done wasn't just about money. It was about control, about needing to dominate and diminish everyone around him. "People like your father," she told me in one session, "they can't exist without someone to manipulate. It's not about the money, though that's part of it. It's about power, about proving to themselves that they're smarter, better, more important than everyone else." So I was just, a prop in his performance? In a way, yes. You were someone he could control, someone he could use to feed his ego. When you stopped playing that role, when you stood up to him, you became a threat. "I don't feel very threatening." Dr. Martinez smiled. "That's because you're measuring threat by his standards. But to someone like your father, independence is the greatest threat. You proved you didn't need him, that he had no power over you. That's terrifying to a narcissist." I also started rebuilding my relationship with Melissa. We talked on the phone every week. At first, the conversations were awkward, stilted, but gradually, we found our rhythm again. She told me about her kids, about her marriage, about her life in Florida. I told her about my students, about my therapy sessions, about the trial preparation. "I wish I'd been there for you," she said during one call. "When Mom was sick, when she died, when Dad came back. You're here now. That's what matters. Is it enough? It's a start." One weekend, she flew out to visit. We spent Saturday morning going through boxes of Mom's things that I'd never been able to sort through. Photos, letters, keepsakes. In one box, we found letters Mom had written but never sent. Letters to us. Mine said, "My darling girl, you are so much stronger than you know. Your father spent years trying to convince you that you were weak, stupid, inadequate. But I see who you really are. You are brilliant. You are capable. You are enough. Don't let anyone, not even him, make you forget that. I love you more than words can say. Mom." I cried reading it. Melissa cried too. "She knew," Melissa said. "She knew what he was doing to us. And she tried to protect us the only way she could." We buried the letters in the garden under a new rose bush we planted together. A memorial to Mom and to the daughters we were becoming without Dad's shadow over us. 3 days before the trial, I received a letter. It was postmarked from 2 weeks earlier, from an address I didn't recognize. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with typed text. "You think you've won. You think the restraining order protects you. You think your little court victory means something. But you've forgotten something important. I'm your father. I know you better than anyone. I know your weaknesses. I know what scares you. And when this trial is over, when the attention dies down, when everyone stops watching, I'll still be here, waiting. Because family is forever. And you can't escape family." The letter wasn't signed, but I knew it was from him. I called Detective Warren immediately. "He violated the restraining order," I said, my voice shaking. "Bring the letter to my office. We'll test it for prints, trace the postmark, If it's from him, it's evidence. He's trying to scare me right before the trial. He's trying to intimidate a witness. That's a separate crime. Warren paused. Ms. Chen, are you safe? Do you need protection? I don't know. I don't think he'll actually do anything. But I'm sending a patrol car to your house. They'll do regular drive-bys until the trial's over. And I want you to vary your routine. Don't go anywhere alone if you can help it. Stay alert. After I hung up, I sat on my couch with the letter in my hands. Family is forever. He was right about that. But he was wrong about what it meant. Family wasn't about blood. It wasn't about obligation or control or manipulation. Family was Patricia Morrison, who barely knew me but had risked her own safety to help me. Family was Marcus Webb, who'd fought for me in court. Family was Melissa, who'd found her way back to me despite everything. Family was Dr. Martinez, who was teaching me how to heal. Family was my students, who hugged me every morning and told me about their lives. My father thought family meant ownership, that because he'd contributed DNA, he had a permanent claim on my life, my resources, my peace. But he was wrong, and I was going to prove it. The trial began on a cold Monday morning in November. The courtroom was bigger this time. A real courtroom with a jury box, a witness stand, a gallery full of people. Reporters were there. My father's new fraud case had made the local news. I sat in the witness waiting room with Patricia Morrison and two of my father's other victims. David Torres was there, looking nervous. So was a woman named Carol Hughes, who'd lost her small business to my father's scheme. You all ready? Patricia asked. David nodded. Carol twisted her hands together. I took a deep breath. Ready as I'll ever be. When they called me to the stand, I walked through the courtroom and didn't look at my father. I didn't need to. I could feel his eyes on me, but they didn't have the power they once did. I was sworn in, sat down, looked at the prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Ellen Vasquez. Ms. Chen, can you state your relationship to the defendant? He's my father. And can you tell us about your interactions with him after his release from prison last year? I told them everything. The demand for the inheritance, the attempted forgery, the private investigator, the conservatorship case, the surveillance, the intimidation. My father's lawyer tried to object multiple times, but Judge Hammond, a different judge from the conservatorship hearing, overruled him. The witness is establishing pattern of behavior, which is relevant to this case. I'll allow it. When the defense attorney cross-examined me, he tried to make me seem vindictive. Ms. Chen, isn't it true that you resent your father for his previous incarceration? I resent that he committed fraud, yes. And isn't it true that you refused to help him get back on his feet after his release? I refused to give him money that wasn't his, yes. You changed locks, blocked his access to accounts, filed restraining orders. You effectively cut him out of your life. I protected myself from someone with a documented history of manipulation. Or you were vindictive toward a father who was trying to rebuild his life. I looked at him directly. My father didn't try to rebuild his life. He immediately started running another con. He used the sympathy of people who wanted to believe he'd changed, and he stole from them. That's not rebuilding. That's reoffending. The defense attorney didn't have a response to that. Patricia's testimony was even more damaging. She presented 8 years of documentation showing my father's manipulation tactics, his schemes, his complete lack of remorse or rehabilitation. In my professional opinion, she said on the stand, Robert Chen is a career criminal who views other people as resources to be exploited. Prison didn't rehabilitate him. It simply gave him time to refine his methods. David Torres testified about how my father had approached him, used their old friendship, promised guaranteed returns, and then disappeared with his money. Carol Hughes cried on the stand as she described losing her business, her savings, her trust in people. By the end of the second day, it was clear which way the trial was going. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. Judge Hammond looked at my father with something like disgust. Mr. Chen, you've shown a complete inability to learn from your previous incarceration. You've shown no remorse for your victims. You've demonstrated a pattern of manipulation and fraud that spans decades. My father stood there, his face blank. I'm sentencing you to 15 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 10 years. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution to your victims, and you are permanently barred from working in any financial or investment capacity. The gavel came down. My father was led away in handcuffs. As they took him through the door, he turned and looked at me one last time. I met his eyes, and I smiled. Not a cruel smile, not a victorious smile. Just a smile that said, I'm free. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Patricia and I gave brief statements. David Torres thanked me for testifying. Carol Hughes hugged me, crying. Melissa was waiting by my car. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it. Tired, relieved, sad. Sad? For the person he could have been, if he'd chosen differently, if he'd loved us instead of trying to control us. I unlocked my car, but mostly relieved, because now I know he can't hurt anyone. For a long time. 10 years minimum, Melissa said. He'll be in his 70s when he gets out, if he lives that long. We drove to our childhood home, my home now. Melissa was staying for the week, helping me finish sorting through the last of Mom's things. That night, we ordered pizza and sat on the living room floor, surrounded by photo albums. Look at this one, Melissa said, holding up a picture of us as kids. You were maybe 7. I was 9. We're making mud pies in the backyard. I remember that. Mom yelled at us for ruining our clothes, and Dad yelled at Mom for not watching us better. We looked at each other. We deserved better, Melissa said quietly. Yeah, we did. But we made it anyway, despite him. Because of Mom, I corrected. And because we found our way back to each other. Melissa reached over and squeezed my hand. Later that night, after she'd gone to bed in the guest room, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and Mom's letter. You are so much stronger than you know. For the first time, I believed it. My phone buzzed, a text from Patricia Morrison. Proud of you. You did good, kid. I texted back, thank you for everything. Her response was immediate. Thank your mom. She raised someone who doesn't give up. That's rare. I looked at Mom's photo on the mantle. I hope you're proud, I whispered. I hope wherever you are, you know that I fought for what you left me. And I won. The house was quiet, peaceful. And for the first time in over a year, I felt safe in my own home. 6 months after the trial, I stood in the garden planting tomatoes. It was a Saturday morning in May, the kind of perfect spring day where the air smells like fresh grass and possibility. The sun was warm on my shoulders. Birds were singing in the oak tree Mom had planted 30 years ago. I was covered in dirt, my hands deep in the soil, and I was happy. Actually happy. Not the fake happiness I'd performed for years to convince myself and everyone else that I was fine. But real, genuine contentment. The kind my mother used to have when she worked in this same garden. You look like Mom, Melissa said from the patio. She was visiting again, her 3rd trip this year. We'd fallen into a rhythm, talking on the phone twice a week, visiting every few months. Rebuilding what our father had broken. I'll take that as a compliment, I said, sitting back on my heels. It is. She brought me a glass of lemonade. You know what else is like, Mom? What you did with the money. 2 months after the trial, I'd made a decision about my mother's inheritance. I'd kept enough to pay off the house, to set up a solid retirement fund, to create an emergency cushion. But the rest, nearly $200,000, I'd donated. Half went to a scholarship fund at the local community college for non-traditional students. Adult learners, people going back to school after life had knocked them down. People like my mother had been before she met my father. The scholarship was named after her, the Martha Chen Resilience Fund. The other half went to a victims assistance program that helped people recovering from financial fraud. People like David Torres and Carol Hughes, who'd lost everything to someone they trusted. When I told Melissa my plan, She'd been surprised. "That's a lot of money to give away," she'd said. "It's a lot of money to do something good with," I'd replied. "Mom didn't save that money so I could hoard it. She saved it so I could have choices. And I'm choosing to help other people have choices too." Now, sitting in the garden with dirt under my fingernails and lemonade in my hand, I didn't regret a single dollar. I'd heard about my father once since the sentencing. Patricia Morrison had called me 3 months into his sentence. "I thought you should know," she'd said. "Your father requested to speak with me. Through official channels as his former case manager? What did he want?" "To apologize, apparently. He wanted me to pass a message to you. An apology for everything he'd put you through." I'd been silent for a long moment. "What did you tell him?" "I told him that wasn't my job. That if he wanted to apologize to you, he could write a letter through approved channels. But that you were under no obligation to read it or respond to it." "Did he write one?" "Not yet. I think he was hoping I'd facilitate some kind of emotional reconciliation. When I refused, he got angry, accused me of turning you against him." "Of course he did." "The thing is," Patricia had said, "I don't think he actually wants to apologize. I think he wants access. He wants a way back into your life, even just through letters. Because that's a form of control too." "So what do I do if he does write?" "Whatever you want. Burn it unread. Read it and throw it away. Keep it as evidence of his continued manipulation. It's your choice. That's the important part. It's your choice now, not his." The letter had arrived 2 weeks later. I'd held it in my hands for a full day before deciding what to do. In the end, I'd opened it, read it once, and then burned it in the fireplace. It wasn't an apology. Not really. It was a carefully crafted performance of an apology, designed to make me feel guilty for testifying, for abandoning him, for not giving him one more chance. Every line was manipulation dressed up as remorse. "I know I made mistakes, but I'm still your father. Family should forgive family. I've had time to think, and I realize now that we both contributed to what happened. Both contributed. As if I'd had any role in his schemes, his lies, his cruelty." Watching the letter burn had been cathartic. I hadn't written back, hadn't responded in any way. I'd simply let the ashes scatter and moved on with my life. My classroom had become my sanctuary. Teaching 3rd grade was exactly where I was supposed to be. Every morning, 23 8-year-olds greeted me with hugs and stories about their lives. They didn't know about the court cases, or the trials, or the father in prison. To them, I was just Miss Chen, their teacher who let them have dance breaks during math and who always had Band-Aids and kind words. In April, one of my students, a quiet girl named Sophie, had stayed after class one day. "Ms. Chen," she'd said, her voice small, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. My dad left last month. He just left. And my mom cries a lot, and I don't know if it's my fault." I'd knelt down to her level, my heart breaking. "Oh, Sophie, it's not your fault, not at all. But maybe if I'd been better or smarter or..." No, I'd taken her small hands in mine. Adults make their own choices. When those choices hurt us, it's not because we weren't good enough. It's because they weren't strong enough. Do you understand? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "You are enough, Sophie, exactly as you are. And anyone who can't see that is missing out on knowing a wonderful person." She'd hugged me then, fierce and desperate, and I'd held her and thought about how many times I'd needed someone to tell me the same thing. Later, I'd called Sophie's mom and connected her with resources: family counseling, support groups, financial assistance programs, the same kinds of resources I wished I'd known about years ago. That's what I could do with my experience. Not forget it, not pretend it hadn't happened, but use it to help other people who were walking the same painful road. In June, I received an unexpected invitation. Patricia Morrison was retiring from the prison system. She was having a small gathering at her house, and she wanted me to come. "You don't have to," she'd said on the phone. "I know it might be weird, but you've become important to me. Not just as someone I helped, but as someone I admire, and I'd like you to be there." I'd gone. Patricia's house was small but beautiful. filled with photos of her grown children and grandchildren. The gathering was intimate, maybe 15 people, all of them former colleagues or people she'd helped over the years. I'd met some of them, a woman who'd been wrongfully accused and who Patricia had helped exonerate, a man who'd been a victim of domestic violence and who Patricia had connected with legal aid, a young person who'd been caught in the system and who Patricia had mentored into a better life. All of us had been broken in some way, and Patricia had been part of putting us back together. "You all represent what I loved about this work," Patricia had said in her speech. "Not the rules or the procedures or the bureaucracy, but the people. The ones who refused to give up even when everything was stacked against them. You all fought for yourselves, and I got to witness your strength. That's a gift." Afterward, we talked in her kitchen while she cut cake. "What will you do now?" I'd asked. "With retirement? Travel, probably. Spend time with my grandkids. Maybe volunteer with that victims assistance program you donated to. You'd be perfect for that." She'd handed me a slice of cake. "What about you? Any big plans?" "I'm thinking about going back to school, getting my master's in education, maybe eventually becoming a principal or a counselor." "That would be wonderful. You have so much to offer." "I learned from the best," I'd said, and meant it. Patricia had smiled. "You taught yourself, kiddo. I just gave you some tools. You did the hard work." In July, something unexpected happened. I was at the grocery store when I ran into Sienna. She looked different, older somehow, tired. She was in sweatpants and a t-shirt, no makeup, pushing a cart with generic brand items. She saw me and froze. For a moment, I thought about walking away, about pretending I hadn't seen her, but something made me stop. "Sienna," I said. "Hi." She looked uncomfortable, ashamed. I heard about the trial, about the sentencing." "Yeah, I'm sorry. For my part in everything, I didn't know. At first, he told me you were the problem, that you were keeping him from rebuilding his life. I believed him." "At first?" She looked down at her cart. "I figured it out eventually. When he got arrested again, when I realized he'd been lying about everything, the business, the money, all of it." She paused. "I lost my apartment. I'd given him money, my savings, for the investment. Turns out it was just another con. I should have felt vindicated. Should have felt satisfaction at her downfall. But I just felt sad." "I'm sorry that happened to you," I said. She looked up surprised. "You're sorry? I helped him try to take your money." "You were a victim too. He's good at making people believe him. I should have seen through it. So should have a lot of people, including people with a lot more experience than you." I shifted my basket to my other arm. "Are you okay? Do you have a place to stay?" "I'm living with my sister, working at a call center. It's humiliating, but..." She shrugged. "I'm figuring it out." I pulled out my phone. "There's a program. The one I donated to, actually. They help victims of financial fraud get back on their feet. Housing assistance, job training, counseling. You should call them." I sent her the information. She stared at her phone. "Why are you helping me?" "Because staying angry doesn't help anyone. And because you're not the enemy. He was." She started crying right there in the cereal aisle. "I don't deserve your kindness." "Maybe not, but I'm giving it anyway. Because that's who I choose to be." In August, on the 3rd anniversary of my mother's death, I did something I'd been putting off. I cleaned out her sewing room. Not to erase her, but to transform the space into something new, something that honored her memory while moving forward. Melissa helped. We spent a weekend going through Mom's fabric, her patterns, her supplies. We kept some things, the quilt she'd been working on when she got sick, her favorite scissors, a pink cushion shaped like a tomato that she'd had since I was a child. But the rest, we donated to a community center that taught sewing to low-income kids. She would have loved that, Melissa said, boxing up the last of the fabric, knowing kids were learning with her supplies. We painted the room a soft yellow, Mom's favorite color. Set up a reading nook with comfortable chairs and good lighting. Hung photos of her on the walls, along with photos of Melissa and me. of her grandchildren, of all the people she'd loved. It became a memory room, not a shrine to the past, but a celebration of who she'd been. And on the small desk by the window, I put the letter she'd written me, framed. You are so much stronger than you know. By September, I'd settled into a rhythm. Work during the week, therapy every other Thursday, coffee with Patricia Morrison once a month, weekend video calls with Melissa's kids, who'd started calling me Aunt and who sent me crayon drawings that I hung on my refrigerator. I'd even started dating. Nothing serious. Just coffee dates, walks in the park, dinners with people I met through friends or work. It was strange at first. I'd been so isolated for so long that basic socializing felt foreign. But slowly, I was building a life that was mine, not defined by my father's manipulation or my mother's illness or my own survival. Just mine. One Saturday morning in October, I was back in the garden when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but it was a local area code, and I was expecting a call from a landscaper about the fence I wanted to install. Hello? Is this Ms. Chen? A woman's voice. Young, nervous. Yes? My name is Amanda Preston. I received the Martha Chen Resilience Scholarship. I just wanted to call and thank you. My breath caught. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. I'm 43 years old. I have 2 kids. I've been working minimum wage jobs since I was 16. I thought college was something for other people, not for me. Her voice cracked. This scholarship gave me a chance I never thought I'd have, and I needed you to know what it means, how much it means. I sat down on the garden bench, tears streaming down my face. I'm so glad, I managed. My mother would be so happy to know she's helping someone build a better life. I looked her up, read her obituary. She sounded like an amazing woman. She was. Well, she raised an amazing daughter too. Thank you, Ms. Chen, for believing in people like me. After we hung up, I sat in the garden for a long time, crying happy tears. This was what my mother's legacy was supposed to be. Not money sitting in a bank account, not a weapon my father could use, but opportunity, hope, second chances. On a cold day in November, exactly 1 year after the trial, I received one final letter. It was from the prison. My father had been transferred to a different facility, one farther away. He was listed as no contact per the restraining order, but the prison was required to notify me of the transfer. I read the notification once, filed it away, and didn't think about it again. He was becoming exactly what he deserved to be, irrelevant. Not a villain in my story anymore, not even a memory that haunted me. Just a person I used to know who'd made terrible choices and who was now facing the consequences. That night, I made dinner, pasta with fresh tomatoes from the garden, and ate on the patio even though it was cold. The stars were out, bright and clear. My phone buzzed, a text from Melissa. The kids want to come visit for Thanksgiving. You up for hosting? I smiled and texted back, absolutely, can't wait. Another text, this time from Patricia. Coffee next week? I have stories from the volunteer work. Yes, please. Tuesday? Perfect. I set down my phone and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, my mother was watching. I like to think she was proud. Not just because I'd won, not just because I'd fought back, but because I'd chosen healing over bitterness, growth over revenge, life over survival. I'd taken the worst thing my father had ever done to me, trying to break me down, trying to prove I was weak and stupid and worthless, and I'd transformed it into strength, into purpose, into proof that he was wrong. The air was cold, but I stayed outside a little longer, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the sounds of my neighborhood, kids playing down the street, a dog barking, wind rustling through the oak tree. Normal sounds, peace sounds, the sounds of a life I'd built myself, from the ground up, with no help from the man who'd spent my whole life telling me I wasn't capable. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who believed him when he called her stupid, who stayed small and quiet and tried to be invisible so he wouldn't notice her failures. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who'd stood in a courtroom and told the truth, who'd protected what was hers, who'd helped other people find their strength too. A woman who'd won, not by destroying her father, but by refusing to let him destroy her. I finished my wine, gathered my dishes, and went inside. The house was warm, welcoming, mine. On the mantle, my mother's photo smiled at me. "I did it, Mom," I whispered. "I'm free." And in the quiet of my home, surrounded by the life I'd built and the future I was creating, I finally believed it. I was free. Not because my father was in prison, not because the courts had ruled in my favor, not because I'd won the money or the house or the battle, but because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. His opinion of me had never mattered. The only opinion that mattered was my own. And I knew, finally and completely, that I was enough. Exactly as I was. Strong, capable, worthy. Everything he'd tried to convince me I wasn't. I turned off the lights, locked the doors, and went to bed. And for the first time in as long as I could, remember, I slept through the entire night. No nightmares, no anxiety, no fear, just peace. Deep, hard-won, beautiful peace. The kind you can only find after surviving a war. The kind that comes from knowing you didn't just survive, you won.